like that. I know lots of people who listen to this show, for example, they happen to read the site of Tim or Gordon and myself, because we kind of try to encourage people who follow us and people who've been reading our stuff to also listen to something else. And shows that start absolutely from scratch, they will usually struggle to get people to want to listen to that. There is no incentive to even start the show if you know that there is no audience to attract the show. So
what?
One point I was going to make before, just before I forget, and sometimes I think I should have a pen and paper, because sometimes I have things I want to say as we speak and I just forget them. One other thing about the free trade agreements is there is a very, very good talk from Larry Lessig, Professor Lessig. He's a person who wrote about the interaction between code and law, and why the area of law is really crucial to everything we understand, even in programming. It's a talk he published about 6 days ago or 7 days ago. You can find it on YouTube. And he was making the point that legislation is always going to favor the big corporation unless we do something to stop that. And that's because, especially in the United States, which he happens to speak about in his country, there is a real strong dependency between the funders of the parliament, people who want to be re-elected, and the people who are supposed to be serving the people. If people are dependent for income, not on serving the people, but on ensuring they get re-elected, they will serve those people who are funding them. And usually this is why they pass the copyright extensions and all kinds of ridiculous and really hard to justify laws. When he was lobbying as the father, I suppose he's the father of Creative Commons. And now he's going against political corruptions because he understands this is how companies play the game. We were talking about the fact companies, when they have patents, they don't forget to make better products. They just have to make sure that they have the same stream of, by which they are the sole option to people. We also spoke about how Microsoft uses the deals with NDAs, with OEMs. And by the way, I had lots of these leaked contracts, very old contracts with those OEMs, and you see how they play tricks like they're not allowed to show the competition as part of the deal. This is the level at which they play a legal war. They actually use the lawyers, they actually use a litigation or a legal strategy instead of a strategy that's a technical one. The family of Bill Gates, for example, is a very litigious family. It's a company that knows how to interact with politicians and laws and things like that, not so much a technical one. And this is one of those companies that was constructed with knowledge of how to use the law, whereas in Google, I think Google was always very much confronting the law because Google was very scary to all the copyright people. It was about organizing information and caching the information and trying to use the information to get money without necessarily paying those people whom it's supposedly, I put it in scare quotes, exploited. It's not really exploiting them, it's enhancing their access to their stuff. And the last thing is the FTAs, and the FTAs is just a way for corporations to ensure that they have their laws enforced overseas too. So this is not about serving people, it's really about just extending the power of corporations. It's a really serious issue that maybe the globalization protesters don't speak about directly, but this is a really, really serious issue even for software developers. Because here in Europe, we start to have software patents getting very close to being legitimized again, and that'll be a disaster.
What you need to keep track of your different points is Tomboy. Tomboy works a treat.
Well, you can use Gnote, of course, which is the equivalent.
I knew I was going to get that response back.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if you were just taking a piece out of that.
Funnily enough, when I thought about the note thing, Gnote was the first thing that came to mind, but that wasn't the joke. So I was racking my brain, right, what was the original one? What was the original? Oh, it's Tomboy. It's Tomboy.
Does Fedora still come with Gnote? Do you know? Or Fedora used to, yeah. It's interesting. It was actually created by a Novell employee, the port. And Tomboy was created by a guy called Sandy Armstrong, I think, and he works now in Canonical unless he has moved to somewhere else. And that, of course, uses Mono, which is ownership of Novell, and it contains code from Microsoft, with Microsoft licenses inside it. So yeah, it's becoming quite a, to me, it's quite a concerning situation because we shouldn't put Microsoft code inside Linux distros while Microsoft is suing companies for unsaid, usually trying to sign deals based on the fact that Linux contains something to do with Microsoft, some IP of Microsoft. So this is just asking for trouble, and an actual problem that the chief technology officer of the, or is it chief technical officer, I think, of Canonical has in fact spoken about in an interview. He realizes there is a bit of an issue with being dependent on Mono, and I do hope that Canonical will just rethink the whole Banshee thing in the next release and just come to their senses and say, well, look, we shouldn't really depend on Microsoft code here. We should go towards something like Parrot, or maybe not Java now, but suppose they could go towards Python. You have lots of different options. And Unity, do you know the story? So I apologize for speaking too long. Unity, I spoke to the developer of one of the developers of Unity before. I used to think it was written in Vala, and that it had some resemblance to to some sort of like almost roots in C Sharp, but the fact that it's being ported from Vala to, which is very easy to do with Vala, it's being transformed to C now. So they do try to implement this using a pretty good and fast framework, and they get it to work with 3D. Yeah, I'm not against Unity. I write some good things about it, and I think it's going to be interesting. Nobody is forced to use that, and Mint is not going to inherit this from Canonical. They've already said that they won't have Unity in the next version of Mint. So.
Well, on that note, or G note, we will start to wrap up the show. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. I apologise for being an absence of music today, but I think we had quite a few things we want to speak about, and I'm going to be looking forward to the feedback for this show as well. Gordon, you might not be aware, but from previous feedback from one of the more dubious characters, we were allegedly, or I was allegedly accused of making a confession of having a fake Microsoft Twitter account, which wasn't the case when you listen to the show in context, but they do like to misquote, so that's why I made a comment earlier about your comments on the XXX domain. I'm quite sure within a couple of days the rumour will be out on the net that Gordon, or Thistleweb, is running a porn empire and talking about it on the TechBytes show when they finish with their...
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, I'm doing these guys a favour. If they're stuck in their basements and they've got nothing else to do but sit and make things up, then I'm going to give them some homework,
Well, yeah.
I'm going to have them going through all the legislation involving adult sites and things like that. Just so that they can sound convincing, And you never know, they might come across these things called lady bumps that they've never seen before.
Well, in addition to that, a couple of them do also need to find out the score when you're hosting a site on WordPress, because the other allegation was that the OpenBytes site, my site, was stuffed full of malware, which isn't technically possible when you're being hosted on WordPress. I can't insert any malicious software into. In fact, there's not much I can insert into the site as a free blog owner. It is a very good service, I will hasten to add. So
the funny thing about that is I do actually have a site on WordPress.
Oh crikey, yeah. Is that for your porn empire, is it?
I do, and I also have one on Blogger as well. Actually I have a few on Blogger. But these are all abandoned. I've still got the logins for them. I actually tried to delete the WordPress one. And then I did all the deletion activation thing. Confirming it, and you get the email back saying confirm you want to delete it. And I did, and I confirmed it, and it's still there. So, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm going to let them find out what it is. Yes, it does exist, and as far as I've not checked it in ages, but as far as I know, they did not honour my deletion thing.
I was one of the first blogs there. But don't expect to. I think it's called something like API placeholder. I was one of the testers for it. So maybe I was like, I don't know. I was one of the first people on the site. I was kind of like online friends with Matt Mullenweg, and like we were just testing all kinds of things, including the spam filters. Because back in the days it was creating this thing called a Kismet, which is supposed to capture comments that appear to be spam, and then train an engine to tell them apart, have some classification. So yeah, I'm one of those first people who are trying these things out, and participate in the experiment. And yeah, and I do have an account in WordPress.com, and it's got like one blog post just saying test, because it's just a spam test of some sort, and probably access